Crystal Tower Information Whiskey 21530 Zulu, wind 060 at 5.
076 Mike Juliet, this is departure radar contact.
Hazardous weather information from Minnesota available on flight service frequency.
You've dialed in the Flying Midwest podcast, connecting aviators from across America's heartland, sharing news, information, and events from around the region.
Calling Nancy 53 on Overtime, Roger, turn left heading 070, runway 9er, clear for takeoff.
Sit back, relax, and join our crew for some hangar talk as we discuss a wide variety of regional aviation topics.
Archer 71143, flying flag, runway 28 left, quick takeoff, left hand south first.
And now, from our home at the Anoka County Blaine Airport, our checklist is complete, and we're ready for departure for another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast.
Contact departure, every flight.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Flying Midwest podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew, known around here as the Badger Pilot, joined by the one and only Maddie. Hello, Maddie.
Hello.
And the man that makes it all happen, Jim. Hey, Jim.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hey. We are joined live by a bunch of guests in our live chat. We're live streaming this special solo episode. So thank you to all of you who have joined us in the live chat as well.
I want to point out that I absolutely loved the two of you were like doing like this little dance number in the background during the intro music. That is probably my favorite thing of the day.
Well, I remembered from last time that our videos can be seen while the intro plays.
Sure can.
I'm glad, like, last time I wasn't picking my nose or anything, but, like, this time I was like, okay, I've got to just, like, jive.
I'm going to really ham this up. I love it. I love it.
Well, I just have no shame, so that's mine.
Well, after the holidays, my bouts with illness, apparently it can travel through virtual recording studios because we've all been sick at various points in time. We're back for another solo show. I'm thankful for everyone who's in the chat. I appreciate that.
Hi, chat.
We will reference that from time to time, so if you have something to contribute, we will take a look-see every now and again and see what you have to offer to the conversation. It's probably going to be better than some of the things we have to say. One other thing I want to talk about before we get going, we put out an episode that, frankly, we really didn't have any intention on creating in the first place. And we recorded last night, totally intended to record a totally different episode with intros and outros for something different. And we kind of went down the path of talking about the recent tragedies. So we've gotten some good feedback from that. Candidly, I don't know that my personal opinion was to, hey, let's put this out and get some great feedback out of this. I think it was an important topic, and I think we just wanted to get our feelings out on it. So though it wasn't necessarily our intent to, try to get praise or anything like that, we do appreciate the kind words from those that have shared that with us.
So I know you told us about the one comment that we got, so I didn't know if there was more feedback or anything like that, but
there's some. I just don't want to get in the weeds of it. I think that we let the episode sit for what it is, and just if people are curious what our thoughts are on those tragedies that have occurred, go ahead and take a listen. But I think that it's a really crummy time for aviation, and I think that we reflected on that pretty appropriately and really organically last night in a way that I hadn't really anticipated, to the point where we made that decision to just make an episode out of it. So it's an important topic. It's on everyone's mind, so I think it was important to cover.
Yeah, I think it was the right call.
Yeah.
So we're being very efficient. We got an episode posted already, but we're now recording one live with you guys. Super excited about that. So the solo topic for this episode is winter blues. So we talked winter weather a little while back, a couple months ago. Obviously, everybody loves the winter because it's so wonderful and the weather is fantastic for flying piston airplanes with great heaters and everything, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm canceled. So obviously we still do a little bit of flying when we can in the winter. But let's face it, a lot of us, especially out in the upper Midwest, are facing those winter blues. So we're going to talk about what we do, talk about some of the things that you guys have to say about just being a pilot in the winter.
Yeah, you guys might have to do this episode without me because I don't let winter stop me at all. I fly. As
Oh,
much
look
as I
at
can,
you.
no matter what.
Hey, I was playing into the part. I'm in Kansas. It's like not that
I will say that that's part of the perk of this episode. I think that it's important for someone like you who does get out there and fly to talk about how you're making, well, not how you're making that work. Obviously, we know how airplanes work.
I'm putting fuel in the plane.
But like how you are, getting engaged still and finding, frankly, the motivation sometimes to go out and fly in some crummier weather. Because Maddie was talking about the awesome heaters that we have in general aviation. And I know that there are plenty of people who have likely experienced the one foot that feels like it's on fire and the other one that's a block of ice because your door seals are blown. So the struggle's real. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Or better yet, the ones that the heaters just kind of don't work at all. That's super fun.
True. And let's be honest, there's some people that will just pack it in for the winter too, like a hibernating bear.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. They will go ahead and crawl into their little caves or their hangars. And there's also people that will put off their annual inspections and major maintenance until the winter months because they want to have that quote-unquote fair weather flying season, and you don't want your plane down all summer when who cares if it's down during the winter? I don't want to go out there anyway. It's cold. That's a real thing. So I think that what we'll do for this is we're going to cover this in two parts. First, we'll talk about how us, your fancy hosts and all that, stay fresh during the winter, how we can stay engaged in aviation still. And we'll talk about some listener comments we've received in the Discord and Patreon. And then we'll jump over to this chat and see what people have to say about that. But then we also jump into the space of how can we freshen up and knock off the rust in the spring before we all fly into those congested, rural, uncontrolled airports for the promise of pancake breakfast. It's when all the hibernating pilots awaken from their winter slumber, and that tends to make them hungry for pancakes. So,
and I do want to say, before we get into it, I hope I'm not talking down to people that park their planes for the winter. There's lots of reasons, and they're perfectly valid. I mean, it's cold out, there's snow, trying to shovel your hangar out, all that good stuff, and I get it. I'm not talking down to it, and I've canceled flights for the cold too. I'm not so out of the loop with that.
I have seen videos of people at Lambeau Field though in like the snow and frigid cold with no shirts on. It's just crazy talk. So maybe it's just in your blood over there.
Yep.
See, that's why you fly in the winter, and I don't.
I'm from Wisconsin.
On the maintenance note, though, I'll just say flat out, like I'm going to mention this in an episode that's coming up here, but our plane is going to go down for an engine overhaul, and we specifically decided to start it now as opposed to waiting a couple more months. We maybe have, I don't know, we could probably let it fly for another month or two, but would I rather have it down for 3 months right now, or would I rather have it down for 3 months in June? Well, I'm kidding myself if I think it's only going to be 3 months for an engine overhaul, by the way. But you get what I'm trying to say.
We hope it is 3 months.
It's not going to be 3 months. It's going to be so much longer than that.
It'll be 3 months.
Good vibes only, Jim.
It'll be 3 months to tell you what else they found when they cracked it open.
Yep. That's we'll dive into that another day. I don't want to think about it right now. Let's talk about how we stay fresh in the winter. And I want to start with you, Maddie, because one might assume that a CFI would have the advantage of having more opportunities to fly in the winter. I don't know if that's always the case or not, but I'm curious your thoughts. I know that Kansas isn't exactly like the same winter conditions as the upper Midwest, but I'm sure you get some things that are not pleasant in Kansas.
Oh, absolutely. Winter in Kansas is a bit different from winter in Minnesota for sure. A lot less snow, although we did have our fair share a little bit earlier this year. It was exciting. But we do have really high winds, and when that's mixed with teens and low 20s or even zero, it can get pretty gnarly. It wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the wind. So we have absolutely canceled flights for absolutely miserable pre-flight conditions. I do, it is my job, so I am there and are available 6 days a week, which means if it's nice, we go fly. So although I do have the advantage of flying a lot more frequently, it's not always, comfy. We're still cold. We have little heater things. We have the heater on full blast if it works. we're trying to stay toasty as well. But mainly when it's the wind, as soon as we're in the airplane and we can handle the wind, it's not too bad. But here in Kansas, we do, and I talked about this, I think, in the winter weather episode about ice storms and things like today where we have freezing drizzle, which when it does end up freezing like overnight, it can get very dangerous. And it's bad news bears, right? It's going to disallow us from even taxiing, even exiting the hangar, because ice is no good for airplanes. Neither is snow, but snow can be plowed and stuff. Ice, there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. Especially once it's there and it's a nice thick layer. So there was a while, almost not quite a week, where we just couldn't really fly because of the ice. Like beautiful days, lovely, but there was snow right over ice. So compacted snow and ice, not a super great combo for airplanes. Yeah. So yeah, I do fly more. And as Jim and Badger become CFIs, they will also fly more, but it's more just taking advantage of all the days you can versus it being a pleasant experience. Because we don't, and we still get rusty. So part of my experience is I get to brush up on a lot of ground stuff because that is what we were doing mostly. If we cancel flights, students are having trouble, they can't start their cars or they, are late because of X, Y, and Z, we will do a ground. So I've been doing a lot more grounds because we got kind of lucky in the, actually the whole summer and early fall was absolutely stunning. It was beautiful weather almost the entire time, which isn't always the case. It's hot and stuff, but generally flyable weather. But now we are getting more and more days that are not like that. Like today, I was supposed to fly with a student and the ceilings decided to be 500-foot overcast, below freezing, and freezing drizzle all day. So we did not go fly.
To your point about ice, I want to bring something up that I saw in the chat here over on the side. Ben, our good friend from over at the Midlife Pilot Podcast, has proclaimed that ice is a curse word down in the South. So I'd buy that. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's going in your drink.
Your Coke, you mean?
Your Coke.
God, could I have sounded a little more Midwestern there?
Pop.
You get a Coke? Can I get a glass of Coke, please?
At least you didn't call it a pop.
Yeah, I just did.
Right. Hey, I know my dialects.
I think on the topic of doing a lot of ground, for me personally, that's where my aviation space goes to in the winter. Like right now, I've got, like my daughter has certain activities that she has certain nights of the week, and one is right next to the airport. So Wednesday nights is my ground night at the airport. I go over there. I cover some lessons with my instructor, and that's how I'm trying to stay fresh. Admittedly, this being sick nonsense has not helped with that journey, but that is something you can do as well. Covering, if you're working on a rating, do you jump into your studies, things like that? From the Discord, Brandon had mentioned, since I haven't been paying to fly the plane, I bought the Finer Points online ground school subscription. A 1-year subscription is about 3 to 4 hours of flying. Obviously, there's a ton of videos on YouTube, but for me, paying for something makes me more likely to use it. So I've been brushing up on some PPL stuff as well as watching some instrument stuff for when I eventually start working on that. I think that's a great point. Yes, there's all kinds of good stuff on YouTube, but I think we also know that you kind of have to vet what you're looking at and know where you're going. Finder Points is a great place. I think that Jason Miller's got some really stuff. Jason,
he's got some really
stuff. Jason Miller has some really great stuff. I know that I got to meet him at Oshkosh this year, and I was all kinds of like nerded out about, like, he helped me a lot through my commercial rating. I watched a lot of his videos, especially on power off 180s and on, all those different commercial maneuvers, lazy eights, things like that. So that's a great use of your time. And if you can jump in, you're working on a rating and you can start working through all that ground school stuff when you can't fly, I think you're still staying pretty engaged in the in that space of aviation and keeping your noggin fresh. No, you're not flying, but I mean, you're still engaged.
Yeah, and to double down on that topic, when I came in from flying today, one of the guys that flies quite a bit at my home airport was sitting in the office, and he was watching a flight inside IFR ground school. Now, he's IFR rated, he's current, and from everything everyone's told me, he's proficient with his instrument flying, but he couldn't go flying today for whatever reason, whether it was winter or whatever, and so he was just sitting in the FBO, highlighting the FARs and watching Flight Insight. So.
Nothing
Flight
better.
Insight is another good one. I have put a lot of those videos in like my own lesson plans for different maneuvers and stuff. I like that content as well. For me, sometimes I'm a dummy and it helps break it down into plain English. Some of the things that I'm a little bit more challenged with. Like I was struggling like crazy lately, and this is going to sound silly to some, but the whole constant speed propeller thing, I get it, but to write a lesson plan for it and explain it to somebody else, I was really struggling. So I went back and watched their videos on Flight Insight, and that was helpful for me. So good stuff.
Yeah, their video on holds changed my entire existence. I for my first couple instrument students, I'm just like, watch this video. And I would peek over their shoulder trying to get refreshed on it. 10 out of 10, A+ instructor.
Anything else we want to talk about in that space of like YouTube or going to like an online ground school? Oh, I guess I do have one other thing. One really cool thing that my flying club does is they do every winter, starting in, it's typically the first week in February they started, they do a twice a week instrument ground school for anyone who wants to work on their instrument rating, anyone who wants to work on their CFII. And one, it's a great way to stay engaged with aviation in general. You can really get to know some club members that maybe you're not necessarily as familiar with, but it was a great way for me personally to learn a lot more about instruments when I was going through my instrument rating, because we had some people who obviously are in there working on their II. So that was really nice to have that resource who they kind of got it and they were able to explain it to us, people who like, what's a hold? You know what I mean? So that was a good use of time.
Oh, that's awesome.
And kind of on that note, I'd say conversations in communities like this, whether it's in our Discord, whether it's in other aviation communities on Facebook, at least the good ones and not the ones that are a little bit more toxic. We all know what we're talking about. And then other aviation podcasts. I mean, yes, we make one, but I listen to several aviation podcasts outside of here. There's this one, I think it's called the Midlife Midwest Flying Pilot Podcast. That one's pretty good. No, in all seriousness, the Midlife Pilot Podcast is fantastic. Those guys are great. Obviously, Opposing Bases, those guys are fantastic as well. I've learned so much listening to those guys. Ready for Pushback, all kinds of different podcasts that you can check out. To which Ryan in our Discord also commented that, of course, it's not always possible to get in the air, but there's plenty of ways to keep our aviation skills sharp from the ground. The internet is full of valuable resources despite popular belief. This podcast is one of them, at least when Badger and Maddie aren't running into the ditch when Jim is away.
Hey, we did our best.
I'm just reading the comments.
Sir.
Don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger.
I didn't. I wasn't. I was talking directly to Ryan. You know what you did.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you looking out for me.
We did our best, but I guess our best wasn't good enough.
It was okay. You did just fine.
Our best was purely mediocre.
Right. That episode is probably the reason we've been referred to as the Flying Monkey podcast.
Yep. Truly.
Ben reminds us they're the Midlife Crisis podcast. So
thank you for the reminder, man.
As long as we're botching names.
Yep. I also want to cover in here that back to the topic about doing like a ground school or something like that. Our friend Alyssa Miller is working on FOI, BGI, IGI, EIEIO, I think. But she's working on all the things over the winter months. In addition, I know she flies a ton. So in addition to that, she's taken advantage of those times where she can get into the books, do some practice tests. So
if you don't want to get into the books, but you like watching people talk or going places and also watching people talk, a great opportunity is the FAA safety team. So the things like the Wings program, even if you can't fly, you can always take those webinars. So getting credits for those the Wings program, or just seminars in general. I used to go to them with my friends for fun because we weren't weird or anything. But it's genuinely, you can learn a lot, especially now that they're doing those in-person ones again. And I will get to a special one here in a few minutes.
Are you talking like special, like just you get to go, or?
No, I actually will not be attending because it is
Okay.
not in my state. However, you two can attend, but it's not. It's a separate part of the topic.
Not to give Ryan more love, because I know that you two are probably against it. I'm all for it. I'm going to give Ryan some love, but you guys are probably mad at him. Ryan also said in our Discord on the topic of webinars, I also seek out webinars like FAA's Saturday morning coffee. Engaging in these kinds of activities keeps your mind on flying and helps you pick up useful information along the way. Great points. I think that that's a great place to go to keep engaged as well. I mean, there's all kinds of great stuff out there. We don't have to just hibernate in our hangar and to wait for the weather to break. So, really good point.
Maddie, I saw you start typing. Do you want to cover that before we talk about actually flying?
No, because I have it down here.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Okay.
Yeah, I had a thought, and it was not a good
Well,
thought.
now we'll go on to Mr. I'm amazing and I still fly in the winter. You guys all suck, but let me tell you how amazing I am with my silly Wisconsin blood that allows me to fly in the winter. Probably shirtless with the A letter of Packers somewhere on your chest.
So I was not shirtless, as I'm sure
Thank God.
everybody that saw me at the airport was happy for. And it's not just me. Ryan was flying today too, also from Wisconsin, also in the cold.
Also shirtless.
Shirtless?
He had the A
Also
on his
shirtless.
chest for Packers. You were the P, he was the A. Did you get anybody else on board with this? Maybe did you get Juliet Echo Foxtrot? Possibly look up like Ed from Flying Stampede.
Well, Ed is a Bears fan, so I don't think he'd play along with
That's
that,
a fair point.
Yeah, because he has
Well,
taste.
there's an E in Bears and there's an E in Packers. Just tell him it's the E for Bears. He won't know the difference.
Oof.
All right, sorry. I'm done with that analogy. I've beat that dead horse.
No, that's fine. Yeah. What were we even talking about? Flying for real. Yeah. 1 second. I have to cough.
This is how viruses spread on the Flying Midwest podcast. I can't even talk. That's how upset I am about it. One of us coughs into the microphone. It goes through these cables into Riverside, and then the other one gets it. So
Yeah.
Maddie will be sick next week. All right,
Awesome.
carry on with what you were saying.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I do as much as I can try and just brave the cold and get out and fly if the rest of the conditions warrant it. And one of the things I found that's helpful with that is finding some sort of mission beyond just going and beating up the pattern or doing a sightseeing flight like that. So the first mission this year that I did was I can't call it a biannual flight review anymore, but I had my flight review in
Oh,
January,
sure you
which-
can. You're just wrong.
But I mean that you get to the end of the month, that's fairly mission oriented. I'd been trying to do it since November, and go figure, winter weather. But having other missions, like Ryan and I today, we flew our own planes. We loaded them up each with dog and cat food and flew it down to Lafayette, Indiana. Between the two of us, almost a half ton of pet food.
Wow.
And so that was
Wow.
organized through Pilots and Paws, and the pilot down in Lafayette's going to take it about halfway from there to North Carolina, and ultimately the pet food will make it to the shelters that were affected by Hurricane Helene, because obviously they're still struggling with all that. But
That's really cool.
the point of that is not to toot my own horn or Ryan's, but more to just say having a mission behind it. It would have been real easy to wake up this morning, see it was 15 degrees, and say, you know what, I want to stay warm in bed. But
100%.
yeah,
I would have done that if I had no mission. Like, nah, forget it.
yeah.
Why do I want to go beat up the pattern?
Yeah, and I knew it was going to be kind of bumpy, kind of windy. You know, a lot of reasons to cancel. And by all means, if you wake up and you're not feeling it, obviously cancel. But if you're feeling fit to fly and the conditions are they're not ideal, but you've got a mission to do it, you know, that's a great motivator to get out and fly in the winter.
It does bring mention of not feeling it. So as we have all, well, I haven't gotten anything horrible yet since Christmas,
Just wait, it's coming
but
to Riverside. You'll get it in a minute.
I know it's coming to me. I can feel it in the airwaves.
For reference for
but-
everyone who doesn't know, Riverside is our recording platform. I don't know that we talk about Riverside every once in a while. I don't think anyone knows that's what we're recording on, but that's what we use to record and live stream on. So hopefully they've got good virus protection. But I've heard from Joe Schaefer in our chat here that thankfully Badger's internet is so crappy it can't transmit a virus. So
You can hardly transmit a video.
I don't know how true that is. I think I still got sick over Riverside from Badger. So I want to believe that, Joe, but I don't think it's true.
Anyways.
And Badger, this needs to be said as well. I'm sorry, Maddie. Alyssa also says in the chat, Badger tooting Ryan's horn. Not on my bingo card. All right. Sorry, Maddie, carry on.
Goodness sakes. Try to be serious for 5 seconds. Anyway.
On this podcast
so, yeah. It's usually me. So, all the things are going around, norovirus, the flu, colds, you name it, people have got it. So just be careful, especially if you're a flight instructor like me and you're flying with a bunch of different people. Make sure that you perform a really good self-assessment, that I'm safe checklist that we all know and love. Especially even like a little bit of a cold can really take you down for a while. So just make sure, especially with medications, you wait the amount of time you're supposed to and just feel okay when you fly. It always feels 10 times worse when you're in the air, especially if it's sinus related.
Sure. Yep.
Please do not. Just feel good when you go fly. Students, don't get your instructor sick, please. Our paychecks depend on it. And also, we like to live too. And if you're just sick, it's just not a fun time flying. So just be extra careful while all these yucky sicknesses are going around. It's like that the whole year round, but 'tis the season. So just a little note. I'm done.
Thank you for that note. It's greatly appreciated.
No problem. I have to be a CFI.
I'm going to see if there's any other comments in the chat that covers this part of winter flying. Ben also mentioned that one of the problems that people do have is so many people put in their plane in annual during winter months, there is not enough ANPs, which then I think can also slow that process down. And I think that's the problem we're going to run into with our overhaul, that there's so many people, again, in the winter that are taking their planes down that it might be a minute. So
that's a really good point. I never even thought about that.
That's why Ben's smarter than us.
Yes. That's why they call him the sage.
It's true. Shall we move on?
I think we shall.
Now let's talk about, all right, spring has sprung and all of our sleepy bear hibernating pilots are awakening from their hangars and coming out to see their shadow to see if there's 6 more weeks of winter or not. How do we knock that rust off? How do we get back engaged in the actual act of flying after taking a break? Thoughts?
Well, I'll start real quick just because going back to the FAA safety team thing, there is a webinar a little early for spring in Minnesota. However, if you can, I keep saying webinar. It's not, I think it is in-person seminar. They just call it a webinar, so I keep saying that. It is February 18th in Winona, Minnesota at, I believe it's Oscar. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we will provide a link in the show notes. It's in Winona, Minnesota. So if you can go, there are, I think, 34 spots left out of 35. So one person is signed up. It is a fly-in event. You go and fly in, have the seminar, or go drive. Who cares? But that's about getting re-engaged when waking up from hibernation and going spring flying. So that might be a good thing to go attend. For me personally, because I do fly during the winter, the things that we don't do as much are maneuvers and things that don't involve constant power. So the rules for our school, under 40, we can't do things like anything that changes power. So stalls, emergencies, patterns, things where we're changing the power a lot just to be nice to the engines. So I think those are the skills that I see degrade in myself and my students the most. So chair flying those essential maneuvers before you go out and do them, so you're not a menace to everybody, including emergencies. Yeah. We always want to be prepared for emergencies, but especially when we can perform them to completion and not just run through the little drill. That's make sure those like the back of your hand, and then go out and do them. If just a word of advice before you go out to your pancake breakfast, please reread Advisory Circular 90-66 Charlie, please. And remember how it is to be neighborly at an uncontrolled airport when you're going to get your pancakes.
Martin Pauly will thank us for that.
He will.
You-
For those that didn't catch that episode, that was his unpopular opinion, the pancake breakfast, that when spring breaks, you've got all these pilots flying into these uncontrolled airports with all this rust they need to knock off. Just good luck. So he doesn't care for them.
Good luck, everybody else.
So I looked up the identifier for Winona. It's ONA, Oscar November Alpha.
Yeah, that's it.
And normally I'm a say no to kilo kind of guy, but if you put the K in front of it, it spells Kona, which is delicious coffee. So
You're willing to make it the
Except
I'll make the exception.
make the
for
exception?
caffeine.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I do want to say too, in the notes it says Maddie reread AC 9066C,
That's homework.
and I thought that meant she was going to sit here and read the advisory circular to the podcast.
God, we're the Flying Midwest podcast, not the Flying Let's Bore Everybody to
Well,
Sleep
it's
podcast.
getting
Right.
kind of late. Some people might need something to put them to sleep. So let's start reading an advisory circular.
Okay, if I need to record an ASMR reading of 90-66 Charlie to get to you guys to listen, we'll do it. Fine, I'll
be
do it.
asleep in 3 minutes.
All right?
Yes.
Maybe a little osmosis into your brain, and then you'll be a more proficient pilot when you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Story
Time with Maddie. Great point, Ben. Just to...
I might have to do that. We might have to have that as a Patreon exclusive.
Oh, funny. Did we talk at all about chair flying in that space?
I mentioned those essential maneuvers,
Oh, yeah.
just on my end. Whereas you guys, if you guys don't fly at all, I say you guys, if you don't fly at all, what you may chair fly may be a little bit different.
And kind of along the lines of chair flying, I saw a lot of people in the Discord talk about using their home flight simulator just to stay sharp. And I do the same thing too. I was able to find online, I could buy a Cherokee. It's a 180, so I think that's the Warrior maybe. So similar plane, a little more...
Cherokees came in 180.
Yeah. So similar plane, a little more powerful than mine. But the point is, the panel is very similar to the panel in my actual plane. So even though my plane isn't IFR certified right now, I can still work on instrument procedures, practice my scan because it's a standard 6-pack in both. And even if I'm just, if I'm flying somewhere I haven't been before, I can get a general idea of the lay of the land just by flying there in the sim or just having fun and tootling around and keeping my mind in the game that way. Well, I've been corrected by a Cherokee 180 owner. Alyssa says, don't insult my PA-28 180 by calling it a Warrior. It is an Archer, sir.
It is.
A PA-28 180 is a Cherokee. A 181 is the Archer, I think. Or I think
Maybe
the Warrior and the
160?
Archer are the same.
No, the 160.
No.
The 160 is a Warrior.
I'm pretty sure that Alyssa owns
The
one.
the 160 Warrior came in 160, but I flew a Cherokee 140 and 180. They were Hershey bars, so a little bit different.
The best Cherokee there is out there is a 1969 Hershey bar Cherokee 140. Nothing's gonna beat it. Done.
The 64 I flew was pretty rad. She had no toe brakes and only lap belts. It was a great
We're
time.
gonna get so many complaints. Actually, this is a good time to mention to leave us a 5-star rating and a review with with just trash talk about us not knowing what our planes actually are.
As long as you leave 5 stars and you want to slam us for not having any clue what we're talking about, have at it.
We love it.
Do you want to read this comment, Maddie, on the topic?
Sure,
of
I feel like I've been
chair
yapping a lot.
flying?
Sure.
I would yapped a lot earlier. I'm going to shut up.
Fair enough. So from our Discord, along these lines, Joe says, I also like to fire up my home flight simulator and run some pattern work or cross country just to work through the procedures and radio work. Sure, it isn't the same, but it will help you feel more comfortable in the cockpit when you do get the chance to fly. Don't forget about something as simple as chair flying. It definitely helps lessen the rust. I could not agree more. Utilize those home sims. Hey, go and utilize simulator of flight school if you have access. It's cheap. It's a little more realistic. It may have motion, which is even more fun. And if you do some instrument approaches, you can log them. We love logging. So, if you want. It's a suggestion.
2 stars. All they talk about is silly low wings.
Low wing gang. Low wing gang.
Ladies and gentlemen, Juliet Echo Foxtrot has left the chat. He doesn't
I
know
don't
it yet. He gone.
I don't know. I'm hearing rumors Jeff might be converting to a low-wing guy.
We'll get him there.
Yes.
That's a story for
Perfect.
another day that is not my story to tell. So
Fair enough.
Mhm.
What else
Okay.
do we want to talk about for re-engaging in the spring?
I like what Badger has to say.
That's good because I don't even know
Coming
what I
up.
have to say.
It's literally here. It's right here. Do you want me to say it? It was originally my idea.
Well, it is a good idea, and if you want to talk about it, I won't steal your
No,
thunder.
you do.
But actually, this is relevant for me too because I flew to a new airport today. I flew to Lafayette, and I had never been there before, and I took a lot of time planning just the arrival. I mean, the en route stuff is pretty straightforward, but knowing what are my options for if I can't find the airport, what approaches do I have available to me in my limited plane just to track laterally and find the airport. I knew ahead of time at Purdue University Flight School is there. I knew ahead of time it was probably going to be busy, but I didn't know how busy. So actually yesterday I was cooking lunch with live ATC up, listening to the tower frequency. And truth be told, you're laughing at me, Jim. Wait until you hear the real reason I logged
Go
out.
ahead. I'm listening.
I didn't know if they call it Purdue Tower or Lafayette Tower, and I didn't want to sound like a total jerk, like, hey, Purdue Tower, and they're like, yeah, Compassion 2756, that's Lafayette Tower.
It's Lafayette Tower to you, buddy.
Yeah, and our left downwind for 5, yeah. But in listening, I heard how busy they were. I heard all the Purdue call signs. I heard all of the, there's another call sign there. It's a really cool call sign. I can't remember it. Ryan, help me out in the chat. What's the other one? It's like a Batman sounding theme.
Like Cool Breeze.
Yeah, something cool. No, it's way cooler than Cool Breeze.
It's Maverick.
Oh, like career track? No, I'm just
Career
kidding.
track.
Oh, I hear career track all the time.
I'm sorry.
We do too. They're at our
Vader. I beat Ryan in
Vader.
the chat. Vader.
Oh. We hear those every once in a while.
I remembered before Ryan's.
It's not.
Oh, he's saying Raptor. I don't.
That's also
That's
cool.
That would be
22.
cool. I don't. Yeah. Well. Anyways, the point is, plan ahead, and especially, in spring when you're still rusty, you're not as proficient as you have been. You can't just go to an unfamiliar airport and just wing it. You shouldn't be anyways, but usually you can get away with, okay, what are the runways? What are the frequencies? And where am I going? But, take the time to really study. Like, if I land on this runway, what taxiway am I probably going to exit off of? Where are the movement areas? Where are the non-movement areas? What's the code to get into the FBO? I remember seeing on one of the Facebook pages, Alyssa earlier this week was asking, hey, if I fly to this one airport in Wisconsin, how do I get into the FBO? Are they open after hours? And so even simple things like that, just so you're not standing out by your plane needing to go to the bathroom freezing cold and you can't get anywhere to warm up and relieve yourself.
Melissa, I would suggest in the future a crowbar and a screwdriver. That should take care of your problem. Follow me for more tips. On
Or
breaking and entering.
usually it's the C-tab.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
should be okay.
Exactly.
Oh man.
So yeah, that's what I have for planning trips to a new airport. But what about you guys? Maddie, this was your idea, but was there anything I missed that you didn't tell me to say that I should have?
No, I think no, I completely agree. 91-103 is the bare minimum that you should be doing when you go pre-flight actions, when you go to a new airport, especially if you haven't flown. I think that, chair flying there, listening to that live audio is super, super important. We have the technology, we may as well use it. Looking at, if you have ForeFlight, I don't know if Garmin Pilot has this, but the satellite view and looking at the airport, looking at landmarks. Sometimes different airports will use landmarks as checkpoints. Instead of saying you're 8 miles to the south, you will say I'm over X bridge or whatever. And that can help you. I mean, not just sound like a local, but at least you'll know where other people are. And for situational awareness purposes, it's huge.
Yeah.
100%. And I know I was kind of giggling earlier when you mentioned listening to live ATC, only because I've been known to have it on at work, listening to various places that I think are entertaining to me. I'll be reviewing reports and listening to ATC somewhere else. Maybe on the other screen I'll have Flight Radar 24. It's hard to say. Maddie, are you being raided? I hear a lot of sirens in the background.
Oh, you can hear that? I'm so sorry.
Like
they're out on the main road.
Maddie's in trouble. If anyone likes to contribute bail money to Maddie, you can reach out to us.
Join our Patreon.
Yeah, right?
The other thing I was going to point out on just re-engaging in the spring is if you go to your home airport and just bang around the Pioneer for a little bit, like that's what I do. If it's been a while, I'm going to take the plane up. I'm going to rock around the pattern for a while. I'm going to have 2 or 3 really crummy landings that I don't want to tell anybody about, where I bounce like a Super Bowl, and then I figure it out again and go, oh yeah, that's right. Here's how you fly an airplane, and then I get back into it. Slight exaggeration,
Yep.
but maybe not. I'll let my instructor be the judge of that.
Can attest. I flew from the left seat and landed from the left seat for the first time in, I don't know, maybe a year at night. And I wasn't high enough in the seat, which means I couldn't see. And all my landings were hot garbage. So, yes, it does take a little while, except for the last one. The last one I remembered what to do.
Well, it's winter, so it would be cold garbage. But
Yeah, well, you can still have things steaming. And
Oh, okay. I'm going to stop that conversation
Anyway.
before it goes off the rails.
So, Badger, we're going to check the chat.
Yeah, I was going to grab Ben's comment, and this is good whether it's winter flying or just a good rule in general. He says, I find if I haven't been in the cockpit for a while, strict adherence to checklists gives me more confidence. I think that's an awesome point, and it's important to point out he's not saying that he ignores his checklist otherwise when he's feeling competent and everything. And I've seen videos and heard people talk about him flying. He's good with his checklist, but sticking with them gives you the confidence that, yes, I'm doing things properly. I'm doing things the way that I've done it hundreds, thousands of times before with a successful outcome. And having that confidence boost sometimes can just make all the difference.
Absolutely.
This wouldn't be a plug for you, sir, for your own podcast with the episode titled "It's not a check, it's a checklist, not a to-do list." Pretty subtle.
That's
However,
true.
That's their episode that just came out today.
That's true.
Yeah,
Go
that's
listen
true.
to that episode after you listen to this. However, there is something to be said about going back to the line by line. So, everybody's kind of has their flows after a while. If you've been flying for a while, you kind of know the startup checklist, you know what to do and stuff. But it's those times where we're rusty and we're trying to do something that we have memorized that we screw up a lot. So I think sometimes going line by line or checking diligently and maybe out loud line by line or doing a couple things and checking more often than you normally would, all checks and balances for you operating in the airplane. To be humble, use your checklists, even if it feels like you're a student pilot again. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Just do the thing and do it safe.
Absolutely.
Alyssa also says, make sure to practice your pilot-induced oscillations, everyone. Do it at your home airport so you know where to be when the trucks come rolling.
Oh, I thought that stood for
Tug you
Public Information Officer. I wasn't sure what that was. So
It took me a second too, but I think it had to do with your landings.
oh,
too.
okay, got it. Bouncing like a Super Bowl.
Bouncing like a Super Bowl.
That's what Jim said.
It's not the same letters. It's the same thing. I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
But Public Information Officer is just in my head lately.
Oh.
All right. Well,
Bouncing like a Super Bowl, BLS. We're gonna recoin that one.
BLS.
DLS. Can we get new merch?
Yep.
New merch alert.
I think we're getting ready to wrap this up. Hey, thanks everyone for sticking around in the chat tonight. Those who have offered some commentary, both in the chat and our Discord and Patreon, we really appreciate you being a part of the conversation. And we hope that these are valuable and, if not valuable, at least fun to come hang out with us and do a live stream and a solo episode. So we've talked about this before. We will continue doing this. So if you've got ideas for a topic you'd like to hear us babble on about, let us know. Send us an email, flymidwestpodcast@gmail.com or any of our social medias.
Yeah, and I think, let's see, Maddie just plugged the merch. She's scribbling away probably at a new design right now. We already talked about 5-star ratings and reviews.
We did.
We already talked about Patreon to get bail money for Maddie.
Yep.
So I guess let's just leave it with Alyssa's comment. If you pilot induced oscillate, you may need basic life support. If you PIO, you may need BLS.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair.
I think that sums it up nicely.
Thanks, Alyssa. Badger, could you say some things?
I can say some things.
Okay, that'd be really
Let's
cool.
see. Yep, we already talked about the live, talked about the Patreon and Discord. Patreon and Discord. That's the only way you can see us on the live. So if you enjoy the live, make sure you subscribe Patreon, email us for the Discord link so you can see our beautiful faces and join in on the fun when we thank you guys for joining us. And until next time,
See ya.
See ya.
through!
Flight Chef 536, contact Minneapolis Center 132.35 today.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Flying Midwest podcast. Until next time, podcast service terminated, squawk VFR, frequency change approved. Good day.